This is Laurel, and I'm doing my movie project on Oedipus at Colonus, and the name of my movie title's A Little Faith. This is just a little quote from the play. "This land will embrace my bones. This is the way. This way." And here we go. So here's some background on Oedipus at Colonus. It was first produced in 405 BCE and performed in 401 BCE. It's unknown whether Sophocles won any prizes, as he passed away shortly after finishing this work. That's sort of indicative that it didn't. Then the second installment of a trilogy, Oedipus at Colonus, is after Oedipus Rex and before Antigone. Some historical events is there's the Golden Age of Athens, which lasted until 431 BCE before the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, which was Athens against Sparta. From 421 to 415 BCE, after major defeats on both sides, the two city-states agreed to a treaty that ensured pre-war conditions. And then Athens surrendered in 404 BCE when the Persian-backed Spartan fleets damaged them so much that they could not recover. And about Sophocles, he was born in Colonus around 497 BCE. Oedipus at Colonus was the last of his plays, though it takes place chronologically second in the trilogy. He won in literary tragic competitions 20 times, never placing below second. Only 7 of his 125 plays have survived, and Oedipus at Colonus was his last play when he was 90 years old. For the synopsis for Oedipus at Colonus, the story follows Oedipus as he's brought to Colonus by his daughter Antigone after the happenings in Oedipus Rex, where he learned about his true identity and where his wife killed herself and he blinded himself. Oedipus sits on a stone that is sacred to the Furies and is told by a local man that he is to leave. However, learning of what the place was, he realizes that his situation was a part of the prophecy, as told to him by Apollo. He wants to see Theseus, the king of Colonus. The chorus, made of the villagers, want him to leave, especially after they learn that he's the son of Laius, but promise not to hurt him. He argues his case, and they become interested, and they wait for Theseus to pass judgment. Ismene arrives to tell Oedipus and Antigone that Polynices has taken the throne of Thebes from Eteocles. The brothers learn that the outcome of the conflict will be determined by where their father is buried. Wherever he is buried will be blessed. Creon finds them and pleads for Oedipus to return to Thebes. Oedipus refuses to leave, and so Creon kidnaps Ismene and Antigone. Oedipus dies in Athens after the conflict and secures the blessing for the Athenians. In Antigone, the following play, brothers Eteocles and Polynices have killed each other in battle. Creon declares in law that Polynices' body shall not be buried. Antigone does this, and before Creon understands the consequences of his actions, has Antigone sentenced to death, and the curse of the house of Laius continues. So the setting is set in Colonus, which are the sacred grounds overseen by the Furies, at least at the Grove anyways. Colonus is ruled by Theseus. And then some important quotes are, "The gods have sent me their message. I understand what was laid down long ago," which was from Oedipus. He said that there'd be signs, tremors in the earth, thundering skies, or even lightning bolts of Zeus. I know it was you who helped me here, guiding me along the path to this sacred site, and for the first time I felt I'd arrived. Which is also Oedipus. And then, "I've been blind for so very long, and you've stolen from me the last light of my life, my own dear eyes." Also Oedipus. So for Peripeteia and Oedipus at Colonus, which is the reversal of a character's fortunes, this could be when Oedipus learns of the value that his death could bring when Ismene brings news of the oracle. Earlier in the play, he's just worried about finding a spot to sit, and then everything sort of happens. For Hamartia, which is to miss the mark, I believe that is when this could have taken place in the earlier play, so I don't really think it exists in this one, actually. He does sort of reiterate his failures within this play, though. And then we have anagnorisis, which is the recognition of what caused their downfall. This could be when Oedipus recognizes the sign of the thunder being the signal for his impending death, which is seen in "The gods have sent me a message. I understand what was laid down long ago." So this is recognition of something he did not already really realize. The chorus in this play is performed by the old men of Colonus. Their role is active, but they don't have any political power. They warn Oedipus about the sacred grove, promise him safety on its boundary, then are provoked to revoke it when they learn about his past and who he is. They do ask Oedipus of his past, and then they teach Ismene the rites to purify Oedipus for being in the sacred grove. And then they also propose to go up against Creon's forces and protect this person that they have taken into their community. While they are proxies for the action they take action too, they seem to act as good representation for Athenians. So for our first major character, obviously this is Oedipus. He's hot-tempered, insightful, stubborn, and in this play he becomes accepting of his life as it is. He loves and respects both of the dutifulness of his daughters. He's definitely at odds with Creon and Polynices. He can see right through their intentions, and he's particularly ashamed of his son. Oedipus is the heart and soul of the first two plays, and the play is centered around him as the protagonist. I'm using him as a parallel for my protagonist Duran, who will be introduced as the wanderer, much like Oedipus. Oedipus feels some guilt for the troubles he's caused in Thebes, which Doran mirrors, but neither are truly responsible for the outcomes, as a lot of in Oedipus's case, it's because of fate, and in Doran's case, it's because he was framed. And a quote is, "The play brings to the fore Oedipus's identity as a father, as it deals so frequently with his relationship to his children, and dwells with great poignancy on both his cursing his sons and the mutual love between himself and his daughters. Oedipus refers to himself as a father more than once in the third person," and that's used as a quote to justify the relationships that he has, particularly with Antigone, Ismene, and Polynices. Next, we have Antigone. She's stubborn like her father, caring and considerate. She loves both her father and her sister. She particularly respects Oedipus, chides him, and acts as his eyes. For Ismene, her relationship with her is pretty neutral, but she loves her. Creon wants to make Oedipus his pawn, as does Polynices, and Antigone does not like that. She loves her brother, and she admits that she's basically sorry for his death, because she knows that's what's going to happen to him, just instinctually in this play. If there's an Oedipus, there needs to be an Antigone. Doran suffers the loss of his wife and daughter. Pauline, stubborn and willful like Antigone, helps Doran achieve peace, much as Antigone helps Oedipus in this play. We have Creon. He's opportunistic, strategic, a bit ruthless, and prides himself as a leader. For Antigone, she's in his way. Ismene is a pawn like Antigone. He captures them. Not very good positive points for their relationships. Same thing for Oedipus. He's climbing to have unparalleled leadership over Thebes, and having Oedipus die there is a really good way for him to do it. And he's pissed off at Polynices, especially since Eteocles was supposed to be on the throne, so now we got him. Creon quickly becomes the enemy along with Polynices in Oedipus at Colonus. As he tries to convince Oedipus to die in Thebes, he's unapologetic and uses the capture of Antigone and Ismene as leverage. I think he's an important character to include in the play because he does everything in his power to get what he thinks he needs for his position of power. There would hardly be a better way for him to show his people that he's a great leader than to assure the land's fertility and grace from the gods. And then while Louis, as a parallel to Creon, is incredibly dastardly by comparison, they're both opportunistic and do everything in their power to assure their position is secured. The three symbols I identified in Oedipus at Colonus are the grove, the blindness, and thunder. For the grove, much of the play takes place in the sacred grove of the Furies. The grove is not only sacred, but it also represents nature as a whole. It's a return to reverence for the gods, respect for life, death, and the natural world. And the quote sort of talks about where the sacred grove blends with water, with liquid honey, and flows from lustral bowls. Beware, stranger, go no further. For blindness, we have it used to be shown reality for characters like Creon, or rather the blindness to reality. And then Oedipus has come to a stage of true wisdom, his blindness symbolizing him seeing the truth and accepting it. So sort of like a weird flip-flop of what blindness really means. It's and Oedipus's blindness sort of relates to Tiresias's and Oedipus Rex in this way. Antigone also acts as Oedipus's eyes and is referred to as such multiple times, so that's why it's a big deal when Antigone is captured by Creon, because he's blinded again in a sense. And then the thunder is that Oedipus hears as a sign from the gods. It signals that he's close to the end of his life and his journey. And this side is pretty much the same thing. We have an additional quote from one of the literary resources. At the end of Oedipus at Colonus, Zeus takes a hand, directly speaking to Oedipus through thunder while giving him a gift of understanding that no one else will have. Oedipus does not doubt or hesitate. He rises to his feet with new powers, able to guide himself and others without using his eyes. One of the first themes that I identified was the themes of redemption and atonement. Oedipus at Colonus has the audience question Oedipus's redemption. We question whether he was fated to be a certain way, if that is relevant for his actions, or if he's responsible for them regardless. Due to this, we do encounter moments where Oedipus does atone. God's fate in the character of Oedipus writes, and at the start of the play, although he knows he is innocent of deliberately trespassing on holy ground, he nevertheless recognizes that what he has done requires some kind of explanation. This references the rites that must be performed to cleanse Oedipus of his trespassing, performed by Ismene, instructed by the elders of Colonus. And in this way, he atones for that trespassing. While this may be one concrete moment in the play where this happens, I think that it being applied as a thematic element is certainly for the reader to continue to ponder over this idea of redemption and atonement. By choosing to be buried in Athens instead of Thebes, or does that constitute his atonement? Is adhering to the god's call part of his redemption? It's all very subjective, and I feel like it's a theme because we're meant to question it rather than it giving us concrete answers in some ways. And the next set, we have guilt and shame. The play thoroughly explores guilt and shame, where Oedipus denies guilt because he claims ignorance. Other characters like Creon use it as a tactic to manipulate him into returning home. Though Oedipus does feel shame, he doesn't necessarily feel guilt for his actions. However, Theseus, unburdened by shame, is accepting of hearing such things and is willing to do so without passing judgment. And we have, you can speak freely without shame. There's nothing you can say unspeakable that could deny you from a fair hearing. We must take all the blame, Oedipus, both you and I, our entire family, the shame, that's Creon. And then, I didn't know what I was doing. How can you call me guilty when I knew nothing? Nothing. And then Woodruff identifies that although he recognizes that the gods foretold these things and wish for them to happen, he does not shift the blame to the gods. Instead, the grounds for his declaration of innocence are similar to the ones any wrongdoer could use today. And so, yeah, that's just sort of the shame aspect and like the feeling of guilt, even if like Oedipus in particular doesn't really admit to feeling guilt, you sense that there is that conflict within him. Finally, we have themes of wisdom and acceptance. It is time, we must go now. I feel the hand of God guiding me. The inevitable cannot be delayed. Oedipus. This article supports the idea of Oedipus's wisdom, though rather than it being the wisdom we commonly associate with old age and experience, I think Oedipus has undergone significant internal reflection that is indicative of self-knowledge, and I think that qualifies as wisdom. As for acceptance, Oedipus has come to terms with his death. He still feels shame for the things he has experienced, but is ready for the peace that comes with death. Not only is he accepting of it, he wants to do good with what's left of his life in the afterlife to benefit others. And the article that I'm referencing is Truth and Self at Colonus. Oedipus is not cured by his own suffering or by becoming a sufferer, but rather by his own intellectual insight applied to his various images of reality and truth. His past traumatic experiences, although tragically inflated, can stand for any developmental challenge that requires a reorganization of the psyche. And that sort of applies to the idea of wisdom in Oedipus's case being more self-reflective. And yippee, we have the movie adaptation. It's time, boys. And this is just a filler page taken from a silly-ass line from the Smiths. The devil will find work for idle hands to do. Here we go! I set my silly little movie in Albert, Vermont. Why? I do not know. Just kidding. I just looked at a map and was like, what's close to Canada? And anyways, we got this town set in this rural area of Vermont in the 1890s. The main story takes place in the little town where Doran assumes the identity of Father Silas. The main locations on set would be St. Amadeus's Catholic Church. The picture up top is like an actual picture of the church in town. And then its parallel setting would be Athens, where Oedipus takes refuge under Theseus's rule, the same where Doran takes refuge in the town. And underneath is a little picture of their town hall back in the day. And the second location would be Montreal, Quebec in Canada. This is where flashbacks of Doran's past take place in the city. These are where the darkest times of his life happened, particularly the loss of his family and the conviction of their murders. He also later goes back there for a trial. Its parallel setting would be Thebes. The clutter of the city and crime alludes to the incoming tide of war in Oedipus's story, and it conveys the idea of separate city-states ruled by different authorities, i.e. Canada versus the USA and Thebes versus Athens. That's sort of why I did that. We got Doran Simon, or Simon, who adopts the alias of Father Silas. His parallels Oedipus. His personality traits are stoic, meditative, adaptive. He enjoyed fatherhood and was people-oriented and sort of continues to be. Values justice but feels shame for abandoning his post. He's the adoptive father of Pauline, and she gets on his nerves, but he has a really soft spot for her. For the townsfolk, he's established trust with them, and they look up to him for spiritual as well as practical advice. To Louis, who is his former subordinate and friend, he doesn't know that he was framed for murder at the beginning or middle and close to the end. And he sort of had like a paternal role to him, so that sucks, my guy. And to Adeline, that was his baby girl. Anyways, we got Pauline LeBlanc. Her parallel is Antigone. Her personality for her, she's full of resolve, hard-headed, a bit of an urchin, but searches for belonging. Doran obviously adopts her and she also senses that he's hiding something. Feels something, obviously, but I didn't write that down. I would say isolated. She's the urchin of the town, and they sort of look at her with their nose upturned. For the townsfolk, they collectively take care of her. Since her mother's death, they still view her as an outsider because she's a bastard child, but take pity on her. To Louis, her biological father, She's never met him until his arrival to Alberg, and she does not like him and thinks he's a creep when he does come in, but she doesn't know why. And to Adeline, she misses her mom. They were close until her death when Pauline was 10. And then we got our evil guy, Louis Boucher, which means butcher. Parallels Creon. Personality, scheming, deceitful, and seeks opportunities for self-gain. He's naughty. He was the former subordinate and friend to Louis. Whoa, that's messed up. That's supposed to say to Doran. Anyways, he's trying to track him down and have him in prison for his misdeeds. Oh, this is messed up. My B. Sorry, we're not fixing this, unfortunately. Anyways, yes, Louis is trying to track down Doran, even though his misdeeds are not real. They're fake. It's all fake news. For Henri, which is this little guy that's not really that important, but is sort of important for the plot. Louis left him in the dust and allowed to go to jail for his illegal activities. Henri ends up outing him as the murderer, but assisted him in taking down Doran initially. He chickened out during the murder, so his hands are like sort of clean in a way. He was once a trusted family friend to Adeline, but he used her innocence and trust against her. He assaulted her, and she escaped, pregnant with his child. Then we have these minor characters of the mayor, who's parallel to Theseus, Adeline, who's sort of, again, paralleled to Antigone again, because she's supposed to be like sort of a carbon copy, or her daughter is supposed to be a carbon copy of her, but don't worry about that. And then we have Henri, whose parallel is Eteocles, because he's paired up with Creon. Creon's parallel. These were things, yes. Finally, for the rest of the cast, we have the chorus. They are the townsfolk of Alberg, Vermont. They represent the chorus for this movie production because they're there to comment on Doran's arrival as Father Silas, sort of make remarks about his services as their new Catholic priest. Like most folks, they value tradition and familiarity, and they take a while to warm up to Father Silas, aka Doran, though they respect his authority. While they aren't the only ones that cast the final verdict of Doran's innocence, they see his character for who he is through his actions and his genuine love for the community despite his false identity, which is a thing that we're going to learn about in a second. But before I tell you about the casting, we have Colin Firth as Doran, who's accomplished with many period pieces. He's pretty stoic in most of his works, particularly Pride and Prejudice as a good example. And then he's a little soft, silly guy in Mamma Mia, so that's sort of what I'm intending for Doran's character. He'd have to put off his little silly British accent. Sorry, guy. Or maybe, I don't know, it's the 1890s. They got some weird stuff going on then. Maisie Williams is Pauline. She's most well known for Arya Stark, of course. Williams would work well as Pauline because she depicted the little urchin kid in Game of Thrones. And then her appearance in general, like, would allow her to portray Pauline's mother, Adeline, in flashbacks, and also play, obviously, Pauline as a young teen for her main role in the movie, so she has that versatile look. And then we have Willem Dafoe as Louis. Infamous Willem Dafoe is notoriously good at playing villains. Looking to the Spider-Man series and the American Psycho for merit, Dafoe's range lends well to Louis' good guy gone bad character. Woo! Sorry we had to do it to you, Willem. Alright, we have the plot. The small town of Albury, Vermont is expecting a new priest. After a misunderstanding that deemed him guilty of the murder of his wife and daughter Doran, a Canadian from Montreal, is on the run from the law. It's been 15 years and he still finds himself wandering from place to place. He comes upon the body of Father Silas on the road along with his horse and carriage. He takes the priest's clothes and enters the oncoming town after hiding the body. The town receives him as Father Silas, their new Catholic priest. Having grown up in a devout Catholic household himself, Doran adopts the rules seriously, genuinely attempting to start a new life. During his time there, Father Silas/Duran learns about the varying inclinations of the small community through their confessions, their wishes, their pain, their motivations, their shame. He helps guide their hearts and relieves their unrest. He is particularly welcomed and helped by Mayor Duncan Campbell to establish himself. As he continues to interact with the community, he comes across Paulette, the community urchin. After weeks of extending trust, he eventually adopts the orphan girl who reminds him of his lost daughter. And then part 2, we have Inspector Louis Boucher, the Canadian chief inspector under the Sûreté du Québec, which is the Quebec provincial police. He's later revealed to be Doran's former subordinate, who comes into the town with word that Doran was on the same road that led to Alberg. He attempts to take Doran into custody, revealing his identity. The townspeople of Albert are wary at first and don't really know whether to trust him or not, but because of Pauline's words of confidence in him, they rally against Louis despite the falsehoods that have come to truth, believing in the goodness that Duran has exampled in his time as their priest. American law enforcement becomes involved and Duran is given to the Canadian officials, though Duran's trial in Montreal, through his trial, evidence of Louis' crimes come to light. Louis' accomplice, Henri Gaultier, comes forward with the information of his plot that began with usurping Duran's title of chief inspector to cover up his illegal dealings. Duran is acquitted and Louis is sentenced soon after. In prison, Louis reveals the events of the night Duran's wife and daughter were lost. He explains that he killed Duran's wife and raped Adeline. Though Adeline escaped from the situation and was found safety in Alberg, she eventually succumbed to sickness when Pauline was young. Months later, after the trial, Duran returns to Alberg. He and Pauline reunite and resume life. The movie ends with Pauline showing Duran the picture in her locket that she kept under her clothing, a picture of Duran holding young Adeline. And that's how they know that they are related. Ooga googa. Anyways, we got Oedipus at Colonus, beginning with the wandering of an older man, and after 15 years, that's what Doron is. He feels shamed for running away, especially after being in law enforcement all these years, but wanted to live especially because he was convinced of his own innocence. Similarly to Oedipus, not feeling guilty for the god's work, but feeling shame nonetheless. The townsfolk are wary of him, just as the elders of Colonus are of Oedipus, but each establish that they want no harm done. Oedipus and Duran are both exonerated in their own ways and find peace by their journey's end. For Peripetea, Doran was in line to be promoted to the chief inspector in the Montreal police. However, his fortunes are reversed when his second-in-command, Louis, who covets the position and needs to save himself, destroys Doran's family and frames him for it. For Hermartia, we have Doran revealing that he is close to figuring out the person who's responsible for the illegal dealings in the city, which happens to be Louis. To Louis! And so his downfall is basically his trust in Louis. And then for Anagnorisis, Doran realizes that Louis is the one that ruined his life, like murdered his wife and caused the loss of his daughter. And during the court trial, in which he gets a clearer understanding of when he talks to him while he's in jail or whatever. We got themes of deception. Doran deceives his community. Louis deceives Doran and frames him for his murder. This sort of connects to Creon and Polynices being manipulative to achieve their own desires. We have atonement and redemption. Doran is guilty in the law for his family's murder and loss. He redeems his value to himself by helping the people of Alberg. And after the trial, he comes home free and is redeemed through the law. This connects to Oedipus and his death benefiting more than just himself in search for peace. He also atones for trespassing on the sacred grove in particular. And then we have Journey's End. Duran, after years without a home and a family, finds community, loses it, and is able to come back to it, completing his journey for love and acceptance. Oedipus has spent years traveling and is able to finally rest once Zeus has signaled his fate via thunder. He also has that acceptance from Theseus in the same way Doron has it from the townspeople and the mayor and such. Symbols, we have glasses. Doron wears a pair of tinted glasses. In the past, they represented the trust that he put in others, i.e. the rose-tinted glasses thing, and his optimistic outlook in life also. In his future, they represent the deception he uses to fit into his new life, i.e. sort of like a disguise. The connection, though not quite deceit, but characters like Creon and Polynices use deception with their communicated emotions to manipulate other characters. That's a little bit more devious than what we're going here for Duran, but whatever. Pauline's locket, like Duran, Pauline isn't who she says she is to some degree. The locket is not only a sentimental memento of her mother, but also is one for Duran and symbolizes identity. The connection is that Oedipus's children are a huge part of his identity as a father, and so like Duran realizing that the locket is actually his daughter's locket. Yeah, family and identity, yippee! And then we have Catholicism and the cross. While others come to Duran to repent and confess their sins, the cross is a constant reminder that he continues to transgress against his new community and God. It's an indicator of shame, hypocrisy, and guilt. The connection is the theme of shame and guilt in Oedipus at Colonus, particularly shame for actions. Additionally, religiously paralleling from like Greek gods to the Christian one, etc. For the first track, we have Conversation 16 by The National. The lyrics are, I think the kids are in trouble, do not know what all the troubles are for. Give them ice for their fevers, you're the only thing I ever want anymore. Now we'll leave the Silver City because all the silver girls gave us black dreams. This song would be used as Doran is entering town. Things are still blurry for him and he's thinking about his losses. The Silver City Silver Girls bit, giving black dreams. Feels like it would work well for the loss of his wife and daughter and the nightmare that he now lives because of the frame murder that's been going on for 15 darn years. And then I think the kids are in trouble would call for the confessions that he listens to as a priest and give them ice for their fevers, referring to the advice he gives them in addition to his prayers. Track 2, What Difference Does It Make by the Smiths. The devil find work for idle hands to do. I stole and I lied, and why? Because you asked me to. But now you make me feel so ashamed because I've only got 2 hands. Well, I'm still fond of you. Oh ho ho. I thought this song could be used for Doran when he's forced to reveal his identity and the townsfolk don't know who to believe about the murder charges. The devil will find work for idle hands to do would reference his taking position as Father Silas because as a wanderer he has no ties to anything. Despite the shame being a constant part of his sense of self, knowing that people that have come to trust him feel betrayed reinforce that feeling. But now you make me feel so ashamed. Alas, he doesn't blame them and is still fond of them at least, which is good. And lastly, we have track the Ptolemaea by Ethel Cain. Even the iron still fears the rot, hiding from something I cannot stop. Walking on shadows, I can't hem back. Buckled on the floor when night comes along. Daddy's left and Mama won't come home. Think there's like a typo in there, but whatever. This song would be used in the flashback of Louis' attack on Adeline during her escape. He would have lured her in with this feeling of familiarity. Ethel Cain speaks about how this song sounds, saying it's like when someone invites you in just to hurt you. The lyrics depict the tortured feelings of someone who's been hurt by someone they trust. Walking on shadows would be inferred as the dark thoughts that follow you when you're in that kind of darkness. And even the iron still feels the rot could refer to, despite us being a strong person, that there are moments that could dismantle that sense of strength. The song's crazy. Check it out. And I feel literally insane for talking for like 34 minutes. I feel like I just wrote fan fiction of some kind, and was talking about it academically, which is really weird. Thanks. So sorry you have to listen to this. Hopefully you don't have to listen to all of it. Happy winter break! JK, one more thing. So scholarly works cited. We got the truth and self at Colonus bit and the God's fate and character of Oedipus thing by Woodruff. Anyways, good night. Thank you. Oh, I didn't pause it.